When the physicians opened the body of the King of Spain in 1700, they were not prepared for what they found. His heart was the size of a peppercorn. His lungs were corroded. His intestines were rotten and gangrenous. His head, they recorded, was full of water. This was King Charles II, the last of the most powerful royal family in European history. And his body told the story of everything that had gone wrong. If you want to understand how a dynasty that once ruled the world destroyed itself from the inside out, you need to watch this video. This is the rise and fall of the House of Habsburg, and by the end, you'll see exactly how the same strategy that built them into an empire became the thing that brought them down. If this kind of content is what you're here for, go ahead and tap the like button. It genuinely helps the channel grow. Let's get into it. To understand the fall, you first have to understand how extraordinary the rise was. The Habsburg story begins in 11th century Switzerland, not in a palace, but in a stone castle called Habsburg, which translates roughly to Hawk's Castle. This was not a family destined for greatness by any obvious measure. They were minor German nobility, landholders in an obscure corner of the Holy Roman Empire, one small piece in a complicated political puzzle. What changed everything was a single election. In 1273, Rudolf of Habsburg was chosen as King of the Germans. It was meant to be a safe, controllable choice. The powerful German princes didn't want a strong emperor, so they picked someone they thought they could manage. They were wrong. Rudolf was shrewd. He immediately went to war with Ottokar II of Bohemia, one of the most powerful kings in Central Europe, and defeated him at the Battle on the Marchfeld in 1278. The prize was Austria. In one generation, the Habsburgs had gone from castle lords to the rulers of one of the most strategically valuable territories in Europe. But here is where the story gets interesting, because the Habsburgs quickly figured out that there was a smarter way to expand than war. War was expensive. War was unpredictable. War got your heirs killed before they could inherit anything. Marriage was different. The phrase that defined the Habsburg dynasty for the next 600 years was this: "Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry." It became their unofficial motto. And it was not just clever poetry. It was a functioning geopolitical strategy that worked better than almost anything in the history of statecraft. The logic was simple and brilliant. Instead of conquering a territory at the cost of armies, treasury, and blood, you arranged a marriage between your heir and the heir of the territory you wanted. When the current ruler died, the lands passed peacefully to your family. No siege, no battle, no widow to manage. Maximilian I, who ruled from 1493 to 1519, was the master of this system. He married Mary of Burgundy and instantly acquired the Netherlands and Luxembourg. He then arranged for his son Philip to marry Joanna of Castile, the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. In a single generation, the Habsburgs had gone from Central European nobles to the heirs of Spain and everything Spain owned. And Spain, at this point, owned the New World. The child born from Philip and Joanna's marriage was a boy named Charles. He would become the most powerful man alive. Charles V inherited everything: the Habsburg lands in Austria, the Spanish kingdoms of Castile and Aragon, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, the Holy Roman Empire, which he won by election in 1519, with a little help from the Fugger banking family and some well-placed financial incentives to the electors. His empire spanned 5 continents, It included the gold and silver of the Americas. It stretched from Vienna to the Philippines. Contemporaries called it the empire on which the sun never set, a phrase that was literally true. Somewhere in Habsburg territory, it was always daylight. His motto was plus ultra, further still. Charles spent his entire reign trying to hold this empire together. He fought the Protestant Reformation. He fought the Ottoman Empire. He fought France repeatedly. He fought German princes who didn't want a strong emperor. He fought on so many fronts that he was almost constantly at war. Despite having been raised on a strategy built around avoiding war, the weight of it eventually broke him. In 1556, he abdicated, one of the few emperors in history to willingly give up power. He retreated to a monastery in Spain, where by some accounts, he spent his final years obsessively tinkering with clocks, trying to get them all to run at the same time. He never could. At his death, the empire was split. His son Philip II took Spain and the colonies. His brother Ferdinand took Austria and the Holy Roman Empire title. The Habsburgs were now two branches, Austrian and Spanish, and both were still enormously powerful. But the split created a problem. And the problem was about to get very bad. Here is where the strategy that built them began to destroy them. Both branches of the Habsburg family still needed to preserve their dynastic legitimacy. They needed heirs who were unquestionably Habsburg, who had the bloodline, the lineage, the legal claim. And the simplest way to guarantee that was to keep marrying each other. The Spanish Habsburgs, in particular, became almost pathologically committed to this approach. Out of 11 marriages among the Spanish branch between 1516 and 1700, 9 were between close blood relatives. Uncles married nieces, first cousins married first cousins, double first cousins married each other. They weren't doing this out of ignorance. They understood at some level that close marriages could produce weak children. History and observation had made that obvious enough. But the political logic overrode everything else. Purity of blood meant purity of claim. Purity of claim meant security of empire. And so the inbreeding continued, generation by generation. The effects appeared slowly at first. The Habsburg jaw, that distinctive protruding lower jaw visible in portrait after portrait, became more pronounced with each generation. Mary of Burgundy, who had married into the family in 1477, showed only a mild version of it. By Philip IV in the mid-1600s, it was severe enough that painters documented it faithfully in official royal portraits. Infant mortality among the Spanish Habsburgs reached 50%, far above the rate for ordinary Spanish families of the same period. Heirs died young. Succession crises multiplied. And with each new generation, the inbreeding coefficient, the mathematical measure of how genetically close the parents were, climbed higher. By the time Charles II was born in 1661, it had reached a level that scientists today calculate as higher than if his parents had been siblings. Charles II of Spain is one of the most tragic figures in European history, not because of anything he chose, but because of everything that was chosen for him before he was born. His mother was his father's niece. His grandmother was also his aunt. By the time his parents married, the Habsburg family tree had folded in on itself so many times that he was, genetically, the product of centuries of compounding damage. He was not expected to survive infancy. He did survive, but barely, and in a state that shocked those who saw him. He couldn't walk until he was 8 years old. He couldn't talk clearly until he was 4. His lower jaw jutted out so severely that he couldn't bring his upper and lower teeth together, which meant he could not chew his food properly. He swallowed most meals nearly whole, which led to chronic digestive problems throughout his life. He suffered from what contemporaries described as a weak constitution, which was their way of saying he was constantly ill. Epileptic fits, infections, swelling, a pallid, wasted appearance that foreign ambassadors recorded with something between horror and pity when they came to court. Because nobody in the 17th century understood genetics, the explanation that filled the vacuum was supernatural. The court, the clergy, the people, they all decided Charles must be bewitched, cursed, hexed by an enemy, or perhaps punished by God. His official nickname was El Hechizado, the Bewitched. Exorcisms were performed. Priests were brought in. Holy relics were placed on his body. None of it helped, because his suffering had nothing to do with demons. He became king at age 4, after his father Philip IV died. His mother, Mariana of Austria, served as regent, surrounded by factions of advisors and priests who fought constantly for control of the young king and the empire behind him. Charles was present at court, sitting in councils, signing documents, a child who could barely speak, presiding over the largest empire in the Western world. He married twice, first to Marie-Louise of Orléans, who died young, then to Maria Anna of Neuburg. Neither marriage produced children. Charles's genetic disorders had rendered him effectively infertile. He died in 1700, just before his 39th birthday, having never produced an heir. With him, the Spanish Habsburg line ended. The physicians who conducted his autopsy recorded what they found with clinical detachment. His heart was the size of a peppercorn. His lungs were corroded. His intestines were rotten and gangrenous. His testicle, he had only one, was described as black as coal. His head, they wrote, was full of water. Modern geneticists who have studied the Habsburg family tree have published research confirming what that autopsy hinted at. Charles II almost certainly suffered from 2 simultaneous rare recessive genetic disorders: combined pituitary hormone deficiency and distal renal tubular acidosis. Both conditions are extraordinarily rare in the general population. Both require inheriting the defective gene from both parents. Both become vastly more likely when your parents are close blood relatives who both carry the same damaged genes. He was not cursed. He was the mathematical endpoint of a strategy that had run 2 centuries past its useful life. Now here is the part of this story that goes beyond royal history. The Habsburgs were not stupid. They were, by the standards of their era, often brilliant strategists, skilled diplomats, and capable administrators. The marriage strategy that built their empire was genuinely ingenious. It worked. It created the most powerful dynasty in European history. But they fell into a trap that shows up across every domain of human ambition. They took the thing that worked and pushed it long past the point where it was still working. They optimized for a single variable, dynastic purity, and ignored everything the results were telling them. The jaw was the warning. The infant mortality was the warning. The succession crises were the warning. Every generation, reality gave them data. And every generation, the political logic said, keep going, stay the course. The strategy built this empire. Trust the strategy. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But Charles II's tragedy was the reverse. His court imagined demons when the reality, written plainly in his body, was the consequence of choices made before he drew his first breath. The empire did not end because of foreign armies or economic collapse. It ended because a family that had mastered the art of expansion never learned when to adapt. Power without wisdom doesn't hold. It compounds until it breaks. And if you enjoyed this one, make sure you're subscribed. We cover stories like this every week. The rise and fall of the people and empires that shaped the world. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next one.